If you've ever felt like you were losing control, this video is for you. It doesn't matter what the struggle is: alcohol, drugs, gambling, food, work, or relationships. Today, we begin a deep exploration of the 12-step program and focus on step 1, the place where real recovery truly begins. First and foremost, the disease of addiction is a problem that manifests itself in imbalance and extremes. The addicted person lacks harmony. The main problem is the emotions. It is with emotions that the addict's problems often begin. We are very sensitive. We feel everything too strongly and with excess. We feel every emotion excessively. The range of our emotions is very wide. We experience every feeling very intensely. Part of our disease of addiction is that we want to control our emotions. When we try to control our emotions, they become even more intense. We have noise in our heads all the time. The noise of emotions, and the more I strive for peace of mind, the more noise there is. It's a paradox. For example, anger. The more I tell myself I'm not angry, the angrier I get. Or fear. The more I tell myself I'm not afraid, the more I feel fear. The disease of addiction is a disease of control. We try to control. I constantly want to be in control, especially of my emotions. On the one hand, I can't handle my emotions. They overwhelm me. But on the other hand, I try to do everything I can to avoid those emotions, to avoid facing them. For an addicted person, emotions pose a big problem when they try to control them. When an addicted person faces challenges or changes, they are most afraid of the emotions they will experience. As an addicted person, I am afraid of any change and new situations. Because I go into these situations without faith, I don't have the strength to do so. Recovery comes to me through a different approach and a different attitude. I begin to see difficulties as obstacles that help me grow. I can see difficulties as lessons that help me grow. Through these lessons, I can draw closer to God. A person cannot come closer to God unless he experiences powerlessness. Powerlessness means weakness, the inability to change a situation by one's own strength. It is the feeling that I cannot change the situation on my own. I feel the pain. If I have strength, why do I need some external strength? When I don't have strength, I need support, and I need strength. The disease of addiction constantly creates the illusion that I have strength and can handle the problem on my own. But it really doesn't. I realize that I need help and support. In reality, I realize that I don't have the strength to change. I cannot change my life on my own. I feel an inner conflict, and it affects my relationships with others. I am constantly dissatisfied with myself and criticize others. I think I would feel better if I could solve this problem. If I can deal with the spiritual unbalance that manifests itself in extremes and mental emptiness, things will get better. I had the same lifestyle. I was using and trying to find new ways to use. I was up and down, up and down, up and down. I was constantly searching, chasing, obsessing. The program showed me that I was constantly trying to avoid facing myself, my emotions, my thoughts. I am afraid to even dream, or I start acting on it with obsession. I have two extremes, both are dangerous. If I avoid it all, I can't live my life. I can't be me. Many of us will admit that from childhood we were kids who were constantly running away from everything. For many of us, it was important not to face ourselves, because I've always been uncomfortable with myself. Also, addiction is a disease of obsession. If you've ever felt like you were losing control, this video is for you. It doesn't matter what the struggle is: alcohol, drugs, gambling, food, work, or relationships. Today, we begin a deep exploration of the 12-step program and focus on step 1, the place where real recovery truly begins. When I lose control of something, it can end very badly. Nothing can make me give up what I want. When something happens around me, it can jeopardize my desires. Or, for example, when I get hurt or something happens around me, I feel like it's done on purpose for me. And I start to feel like I'm the only one who feels this way. I start to realize how much this world doesn't understand me. I start thinking about what a wonderful person I am, how unlucky I am, how everyone around me is not like me. Then the world would be a different place. The disease of addiction is the disease of self-deception. Addiction is the disease of dishonesty. The disease of addiction is constantly blaming others for what is going on inside and out. The disease of addiction makes me a very disgruntled person. I am constantly looking for something in the world around me to fill my inner emptiness. And I feel like if I find this or that person, everything will be okay. Maybe it will be that person, or that husband, or that wife. Or maybe kids will fill me, or another beautiful home, or another job. Maybe if I am loved, that will fill me up. Or if people think well of me, that will fill me up. But step 1 shows me that the more I try to fill this inner void, the more it grows. On the program, it's called constant dissatisfaction and constant mental emptiness. I am a person who feels dissatisfied with myself and what I am doing. I constantly need permission to act. The disease of addiction starts as a small parasite. Our program says that once is not enough and 1,000 times is too many. Why does this happen? What happens to the parasite when it begins to feed? At the very beginning, the parasite takes a little energy and strength from a person. He sucks out of him not so much, but over time. After 6 months, the parasite sucks even more out of the person. After 2 years, the parasite sucks even more out of the person. And after 5 years, it just sucks and sucks out of the person. That is the disease of addiction. Why does our program talk to us about abstinence? Why does the program not only talk about abstinence from drugs and substances, but also about different compulsive behaviors? The steps show me that the most important thing is to not act influenced by my thoughts and feelings. Not everything I think is right for me, and not everything I want is right. Mostly everything I feel is an illusion and a delusion. More often than not, my thoughts and feelings turn out to be an illusion. The addicted person is often in their own world of fears and anxieties. I have said that thoughts and feelings are just an illusion. If you believe them, the world seems very dangerous and threatening. As an addict, I want to help those around me, the world. But in reality, I can't even get my life in order. My mentor gave me a simple example. He said, "Look, you see you can't even manage a small stall, but you want to control a huge supermarket." I asked what he meant by that. He replied, "Your life is out of control. You can't even control your life, let alone the lives of your wife, your children, your loved ones, your co-workers. You can't even get your own life in order." I said, "But that's what society expects of me, isn't it?" The disease of addiction is a disease of expectations. The goal of recovery is to give up expectations. When I expect something, it leads to disappointment, and I begin to destroy myself. I had previously talked about the disease of addiction as my personal problem, but now I realize that it affects everyone. I talked about how the disease affects my life. Let's look at the situation I am in. I have people in my life that surround me, my wife, my husband, my children. I am dependent on them. There is a lot of noise in my life. My noise affects those around me. When I am immersed in my problems, I forget that other people also have their own problems and their own noise. When these two noises collide, there is an explosion. The program teaches me to be aware of and accept what is happening. If I capitulate to my mood changes, to my noise, feelings, and thoughts, to my shortcomings, that is, to my undesirable, harmful, destructive behavior that I try to change but cannot, it means that I want to stop doing something. I want to change my behavior, but in my own strength I am unable to. When I accept these thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in myself with the help of the program, I can accept those around me as well. Until I accept myself, I cannot accept these things in those around me. Let's say I am immersed in some illusory world, and I think of myself as someone who follows high spiritual principles. It seems to me that my spouse must also be a person who lives according to these principles. However, if I accept myself as I am, with all my imperfections and experiences, I realize that my wife or husband may also have similar feelings. I accept that they too may have problems and discomfort. I try to be open and understanding towards my loved ones, even if they do not always share my views and moods. I try not to judge them harshly or demand from them what they cannot give. This program helps me to change my attitude to those around me and accept them as they are. I realize that we all have difficult moments, and it is normal. It is important to be tolerant and understanding, even if we don't always agree with each other. To me, the phrase, "I have a lot of noise in my life," means that I feel discomfort and dissatisfaction. I don't feel fulfilled and joyful. I lack harmony and peace. Because of this, I start to feel sorry for myself and think that my life is not what I would like it to be. And so I start thinking that things will change if this or that happens. And that leads me to start destroying everything around me. Anyone who is around me in this situation does not envy me. He becomes a miserable and poor person. I have seen this over the years and realized how my moods change. These swings from bad to good to bad affect the people around me, my family. It's important for me to take responsibility for this. It's important to realize that this is my problem. The world around me is not my enemy. The world doesn't want to hurt me. It's not at war with me. It is my addiction that causes me discomfort and pain. Addiction is a war. It is a disease that constantly makes me fight. My disease is a constant opposition. It is constantly set against everything around me. I constantly feel like an anti-human who is against everything. The program teaches me that if I am such a difficult person, I have a spiritual problem. I can feel bad about myself. I can be unhappy with myself. I am a person who is not happy and criticizes. Maybe other people have their flaws and character traits too. Why am I allowed to? Why do I have the right to do that? But why don't other people have the right to do that, like criticize or be dissatisfied? It seems to me that I am somehow special and others are not. It is very important for me not to shift the responsibility for my actions to the world around me or my parents. I have to take responsibility for my own actions and my own life. My behavior has always been a result of my feelings. If I think back to the past, I can clearly see that. People who are guided by other principles, such as spirituality, may not act under the influence of feelings. My feelings are my enemy. The spiritual way of life we are indoctrinated to live is to stop acting under the influence of feelings. We are not talking about whether this is bad or good. We are talking about getting rid of the problem. There is no such thing as if a person has done something, is it good or bad? No. Often a person just can't do otherwise. Let me tell you a story. One day, as I was driving home, I thought about what kind of person I wanted to be that day. I decided that I would be calm and kind and that nothing could make me angry. I was sure that whatever my wife said to me would be said with love. But unfortunately, when I got home, everything changed. My sickness and insanity came out, and I began to act out of my feelings. I needed more of God's presence in my life, so I didn't act out of my feelings. I realized this, but I needed to act. When I act out of my feelings, I act out my illness. I thought I was going to be okay, but it was an illusion. I thought I could handle myself, but it was impossible. I was breaking down, and I couldn't handle my own strength. I couldn't get through the situation. I was just falling apart. I needed to realize that I had a problem in several aspects. The first aspect is my feelings. The second aspect is my thoughts. How I think and how I perceive the situation. How I feel about what is going on. A person can say or do something, and I can make a drama out of it. I can create a tragedy. The program asks me, "Are you perfect?" Of course not. I don't feel good all the time, and I don't live in constant balance. Maybe you need to rethink how you treat those around you. I realize that nothing is perfect in this world except spirituality and God. It is important to realize that other people are not perfect either. This allows me to have compassion. I can show mercy, gratitude, and love to people, especially to my family members, my children, and my other half, to my brothers, sisters, and parents. The program shows me that they are suffering too. Maybe God has not yet opened their eyes to what they are doing. Maybe they don't need the program. My responsibility lies in how I behave in these relationships and what I do. The disease of addiction is the disease of snobbery and selfishness. It often happens that a person comes to a program, spends some time in groups, and suddenly becomes a professor. He comes home, sits down at the table, and starts analyzing everyone. A discussion begins about how his other half is not in self-concentration or connected to God, but is operating on defects. I need to see my part in the world. My disease of addiction is constantly looking for a way to escape reality and myself. When I want to be in control, I don't care who gets hurt. I am fighting my selfishness, and that is the process of recovery. Working on my selfishness is very difficult. Humility for me is feeling that I am no better than anyone else. I try not to compare myself to others, but to look for common ground. In the Narcotics Anonymous community, I am looking for solidarity, not trying to stand out. I have been working with people for many years, and I see that everyone has their own vulnerabilities related to addiction. Some have it in their emotional state, some have it in their material well-being. Fortunately, my disease has affected all areas of my life, and it helps me understand other people better. When I think that I am stronger in one area and weaker in another, it can be dangerous. In that case, I will not seek recovery in the area where I feel vulnerable. The disease of addiction is a disease of dishonesty with oneself. It tries to hide its manifestations and convince me that the world around me is not okay, and I am. But I know it isn't. It seems to me that only if this person changes will I be okay. I have realized one truth. With all of God's prayers, efforts, and help, I can only change my life, only myself, and no one else. When I try to change the people around me, it leads to pain and frustration. It leads to conflict and problems in my relationships with these people. The disease of addiction makes it very hard for me to accept myself. I don't get to choose how I feel about myself. I, as a human being, have no choice. How am I going to feel? I only have one option. What will I do out of these feelings? How will I behave out of these feelings or out of spiritual principles? At the beginning of the path, I could get up in the morning and I felt very happy and good. An hour later, I was feeling really bad. By lunchtime, I was feeling good again. Then an hour later again, I was feeling really bad. And I tried to make myself feel good, and it never worked. I just want to draw your attention to the utter powerlessness to your own feelings.